Welcome to Spotlight On, the must-listen podcast series where visionary leaders, global executives, trailblazing entrepreneurs, and top-tier experts come together to share their inspiring stories and tackle the hottest issues facing businesses today. Brought to you by the Barton Partnership, an award-winning global talent solution organisation, we specialise in executive search, independent consulting, and consulting solutions from strategy through to execution. Our mission? To help businesses accelerate their growth by connecting them with world-class strategy and transformation talent. Tune in and join us as we shine a spotlight on the game changers and thought leaders who are shaping the future of business.
Today, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sharon Rice-Oxley to the Spotlight on Women in Leadership podcast. Sharon is the co-founder of Q5, a global consulting firm that focuses on supporting clients to improve their organizational health. For 30 years, Sharon has been working with leadership teams to shape, drive, and deliver organizational transformation, which result in long-lasting behavioral and business change. Sharon started her career at Accenture and prior to founding Q5 was the head of organization design and development at BAA, the UK Airport Authority. Sharon studied Russian and German and has worked in both countries. Sharon has an MBA from the City University Business School. She is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. And when she's not working, she's busy at home, living in London with 3 children. Sharon, thanks again for joining us today.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Sharon, you were the first in your family to go to university and have since built a 30-year career in consulting. Looking back to that young woman starting out, what was driving her then? And is it the same fuel that drives you now?
It's a great question, and thinking about it throws you right back to the beginning of your career, which is a lovely thing to do, I think, at times. And when I look back, I think what drove me were 2 things. I do have a real sense of adventure. I chose to study Russian and German at university. I was fascinated by the Cold War. I was fascinated about what was going on behind the Iron Curtain. And I loved languages. And so, I didn't go for the straight up German and French. I decided to put the Russian in there. I guess from a sense of adventure and the sort of the unknown, where could that take me? And I think the second thing that fueled me was I have amazing parents who I'm really grateful and thankful are still with me. And they never made me feel that anything was impossible. So I never doubted that I could go off and study Russian and then go to Russia. And we'll probably talk more about that. So this sense of anything was possible, adventure and possibility, I think, were the 2 things that fueled me.
I love it. And they still fuel you today?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We'll talk more on that. Yes.
And was there a person or a moment or even a challenge that made you believe leadership was something you could own?
Again, casting my mind back to my early life, it might sound cliched, but I think it was my head teacher, Miss Locke.
Oh.
She was an amazing woman. She led the school that I went to. I went to the local comprehensive school in Northampton, which is where I grew up. And Miss Locke was head of the Northampton School for Girls. And she'd worked with girls her whole career as a teacher. And so she obviously could spot potential in people. And I didn't massively love school. I was a hard worker. I, threw myself into my studies. But she made me head girl in my final year of school. And again, sounds a bit cliched. I'm the eldest child, head girl. But, she kind of gave me a sense of put yourself out there, put yourself at the front here and bring the team of girls around you. And that, I think, was the moment where I suddenly thought, I can do this. And I got a real joy from seeing people respond to what I wanted to do and some of the ideas that we had. And so I think it really went back to there. Again, it's that point about feeling like anything was possible because I got that sort of guidance and support really early. She was one of the reasons why I definitely felt I should go to university. Not many people in my family had. Mm-hmm. And, she was really clear that was a path that I should consider. And I'm eternally grateful for her guidance.
Thank you for Miss Lott. And But it's always great, I think, to have, those, particularly at such an early age, for someone to spot your potential and just give you that inspiration and the extra boost. And definitely being head girl gives you that early leadership responsibility. You co-founded, speaking of leadership, Q5 in 2009, right in the middle of the financial crisis. What made you believe that was the right moment to start a new business?
Again, a brilliant question. And in reality, my answer to that is I don't think there's ever the perfect moment to set up a business. I think founding a business is all about when you are personally ready, not what is going on around you economically, societally. I think if you waited for the perfect external conditions, probably none of us would ever set up a business. So you have to be ready personally. And so for me, I had 3 children by the time I set up Q5. I had 15 years of consulting experience under my belt. I started my career at Accenture after I'd studied for an MBA. I didn't really know what consulting was until I did my MBA, and I found Accenture at the end of that course. And then, having done a period of time at Accenture, I went in-house to BAA to get that internal experience. So I felt like I'd seen consulting from a number of angles, both in a big consulting, in-house, what it takes. And I was personally ready to step up and do something a bit different, back to that sense of adventure. I was working as an independent consultant at the time in 2007, 2008, in the run-up to planning Q5. And so I was starting to miss the team. For me, building a business is all about building the team around you and seeing what you can achieve through that. So, yeah, some people told us we were mad because it was the global financial crisis. But actually, the type of work that we do at Q5, clients need you in both the tough times and the good times. And we did a lot of cost restructuring work in those early years.
Okay. And leaning into that and looking back, what fears did you have and how did you overcome them?
Well, there were 5 of us that co-founded Q5. 3 of us are still in the business now, 16 years on. And again, if I cast my mind back, I probably thought of things like, can I do this? Can we do this? Will we be good enough? Are we going to earn enough money? I think I had all of those doubts. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I had set up a business before Q5 called Professional Parents, which was a coaching business for couples as they began their transition into the world of work and bringing up their families. And I'd done that on my own. And I knew that in order to have big growth ambition, I'd need to have more than just me working in a business. And so it was very deliberate that there were 5 of us, but we didn't all know each other massively well. Okay. And so there was a certain amount of, is this going to work? Are we going to work as a team? We did spend time on our values and why we were doing this and what was motivating us. And I think that was really, really important because in the early stages of setting up a business, it's really tough. We didn't pay ourselves for the first 6 months. We were able to pay ourselves at the end of the first year, but you need to know that the motivations and value set are quite similar.
Yeah. And can you share with us maybe an example of a mistake or a challenge that gave you your biggest learning in those early days?
There are so many things that you end up doing wrong or learning from. I mean, for me, I don't look back and think about one defining challenge or opportunity. For me, I think it's like constant learning, constant tweaking, constant improvements. I think probably the biggest mistakes we've made and the biggest successes we've made over the years in Q5 have been around hiring people. Which is very much the world that you inhabit, Jane. So I think that probably early on, as we started to hire people, recognizing when the fit wasn't there and it wasn't going well, dealing with that really quickly, carefully and appropriately was probably the hardest thing I found because it's all about people. We're in the people business, and building a business is all about the people around you. So we all had to lean into that and learn, trust our instincts, to begin to trust our instincts more than perhaps we did at the very beginning.
Yeah. And I think, we'll stay on the thread with people because, you've said that when people can bring their true selves to work and when business and individual motivations align, that's when the magic happens. What does that look like in practice from what you've seen over the years?
Yeah. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned from setting up and growing Q5. It may not always look like the textbook answer, an individual wanting to go to a different part of the world or to invest some time and money in a particular offering. But I think it's really important that as a leader, you take time to understand where people are in their professional and personal lives so that they feel comfortable sharing what their ambitions and maybe some of their fears, but also where they want to get to, so that you can together create that path of development and growth. Consulting, the profession that we've all chosen, is a tough industry. You need a lot of resilience. You need to be very adaptable. You need to be able to pivot hard. And so people go on a journey through their consulting careers. And I think one size doesn't fit all at every point of people's careers. And so it's taking time as a leader to build the trust with individuals that they feel they can talk to you about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And being a founder of a business as well. And, we talked about recruiting and the judgment and the instincts. Are there specific qualities you look for when hiring people better than yourself?
For sure. I think it's really important that you look for resilience in consulting. As I've just said, consulting is a tough gig. So I think that resilience is really important, and that looks different for different people. They don't need to look and act like me or indeed any of the other founders, but they need to know themselves what keeps them at work, what keeps them fit and healthy in the working environment. So certainly the ability to acknowledge and understand their own resilience. I think emotional intelligence, sometimes an overused phrase, but again, the consulting that we do requires a true understanding of what's going on in our clients. And so you can have a very intellectually motivated and keen consultant, but if they don't get the whole kind of stakeholder landscape and what is going on for the client in this moment and how to help that client, I think that can be tough. And I think I also look for a growth mindset, an open mindset, right? What's the art of the possible here? What can we, when the planets align, what can we go for? So a boldness and a braveness in sort of trying different things.
In your organization, you talk about, and you work across, for example, oil and gas, retail, FMCG, the public sector, and more. What leadership qualities do you see as truly universal when it comes to improving organizational health? And talk a little bit about what you mean by organizational health, I think, to set that context.
Organizational health for me looks like resilience. It looks like adaptability. It looks like holding the narrative of the organization. Where is this organization headed? And how are you telling the story of that organization as you go? When I'm working with clients, how are they authentically themselves in their organization? How do they connect with the purpose and the direction that they are setting for their organization? And how do they live that day to day, every day? And how do they tell that story and that narrative for their teams? Because people need to believe in the direction, they need to understand the direction, and they need to hear that time and time again. That's not a one-time thing. So I think there's something about authenticity, direction setting. I think something about the ability to really listen to your teams. What do they need? What are they really telling you? That idea of, proper two-way engagement as a leader in a healthy organization. Without that, you don't know. The command and control is no longer the great leader, I think, organizationally. For vulnerability and humility, what as a leader do you not get or not understand? And how do you then work out who do you need to put in place around you to fill those gaps? We don't know what our blind spots are, but how do you as a leader assess what you don't know? And how do you then work on closing that gap?
Yeah. And I think staying with culture, but looking at, you spend time each year in Q5's offices outside of the UK. So how has working across cultures shaped your perspective on organisational health and leadership? Do you adapt your approach depending on the cultural context?
Yeah, I mean, I think cross-cultural working has been important for me. It's a theme all the way through my career, right back to that time I was describing in Russia. I think I am defined by working across cultures, actually, Russia and Germany in particular. But now in the Q5 context, with our offices in the US, in Australia, and most recently in the Middle East, I thrive in that environment, actually, because I think working across cultures really forces you to listen hard to what's going on. You can make no assumptions about the cultural environment that you're stepping into. So it sharpens your listening skills, it sharpens your assessment of what is needed in a particular situation. And so I thrive in that environment, and it allows me to really think about the environment that our teams are operating in and what do they need. Back to that, let's line up what an individual needs with what the company needs. So yeah, I enjoy it. I probably naturally adapt because I've been doing it my whole career. But I think it also helps me keep things in perspective when you get the chance to visit and see those different environments. And I think that's important as a leader.
Wanting to talk a little bit about this is a podcast to spotlight women in leadership. You sponsor Q5's Women's Network. What's one change you've seen when women have more space and visibility?
Do you know what? I think it's confidence. I think that's a really easy answer for me. I think it is seeing confidence in the women that choose to use the Women's Network in Q5. I think they get confidence because they have a space where their voice can be heard. It's a safe space. We've created a safe space for women in Q5 to share. Not that the rest of Q5 isn't safe, but we've been tackling really difficult topics like female health, endometriosis. I mean, we as a group have talked about periods. I never talked about periods at work before. We've created a space where not only are we able to talk about that together, we've then talked about it with all our male colleagues. And I think it's shocked and terrified some of them at times. But I think by creating that space where nothing is taboo in terms of the women's agenda, we've given the women a voice to talk about it and to speak up. Yeah, I'm immensely proud of not actually of me for doing it, but of the team that have sort of demanded that of me and of the organisation.
Yep. And I think, earlier probably in both our careers, these kind of networks didn't exist. What difference do you see them making now, and what more can we do?
Again, starting out in my consulting career at Accenture, there were definitely women's networks, but I think for you and I, in our careers and the generation that we inhabit, we felt like we needed to do it beyond the women's network. I certainly did. I felt like I don't want to be in a marginalised group. I want to be in the main. I want to be in the core. So I sort of didn't vote with my feet. I didn't choose to join those networks. Now, as I sponsor it in Q5, I look back and wonder whether that was the right thing, whether I could have had a different impact. I think they're more vibrant. I think it's more open. I think it's more on the women's terms now than it was perhaps at the beginning of our careers. I think we need to keep sponsoring those. You and I that needs to be our legacy, I think, in any organisation that we're in, any organisations that we touch. Something that's really important to me in this conversation, though, is that all of our colleagues join us in that conversation. So for me, this should not feel exclusive. And so we work really hard at Q5 to bring all voices into those debates. We call them courageous conversations, and we actually held one the other week on allyship, and that was across all of our diversity groups coming together to talk about allyship at Q5 and what more we could do. For me personally, I need to keep creating the space for the next generation to help us push the boundary.
Yeah, which definitely sounds amazing. I'd like to hear a little bit more about allyship and how you've been developing that.
Yeah, so our courageous conversation a couple of weeks ago, I mean, we had about 70 people in London come together for a lunch and learn. And one of our team, Dale Graham, who knows this topic particularly well, helped us sort of think about the different types of allyship. I think each and every one of us might naturally have a certain style that we use for allyship. We might use sponsorship, or we make sure that somebody has a voice in a meeting. But there are many more forms of allyship than those that we just naturally go to. And we used real life scenarios from individuals in Q5 who had experienced particular situations that they wanted to explore. How could the wider team have played a different role in that particular moment from an allyship perspective? So that might be finding your voice in the room. It might be getting into the room if you're not invited into the room. It might be about the unconscious biases that we see people holding. And so what are the different techniques and tactics as individual team members can we employ? And I think having a big group discussion about that's really powerful because we're using the same language now. And we had our away day in Portugal last week for the team. And I saw people reference it. Somebody spoke up on behalf of somebody else and it was called out. Seeing it in action, the immediate impact back into the organisation is really heartwarming.
Yeah. No,
we've got to practice it. We won't get it right all of the time.
Yeah, well, there is no perfect.
Practice
makes perfect. Absolutely. But I like the term allyship. I think it's really good. Move it a little bit to, I think, which is super interesting in the work that you do. But you've led through both the financial crisis and the pandemic and the tectonic industry shifts that we're seeing at the moment. But if we just look back on the financial crisis and the pandemic, which moments tested you the most? And what did you learn about yourself through that process?
Big questions, Jane. Big questions.
Sorry.
I think I covered the global financial crisis a little earlier because that was when we founded. And I think, as I made the point, we were ready, I think, as a set of individuals to get on this journey. And so that context was an opportunity for us because it was the moment we decided to set up Q5. So all the learning that goes with that would be my answer there. When I turned to the pandemic, of course, it was super shocking, super dramatic. And sometimes when I look back at it now, it feels like it almost didn't happen. For sure, enduring changes in terms of our healthcare system and the impact on our workplaces from hybrid and so on. It's amazing how resilient organizations and people are. But when I take myself back to that moment, when we went into lockdown, Q5 was about 10 years, 11 years old. And so we had something to lose. In the global financial crisis, we were just setting out. It was all about that adventure and the art of the possible of growth. In the pandemic, we were responsible for probably 200 people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying in that very moment of lockdown. And I remember day one sitting at my kitchen table thinking, right, okay, how do you run a business from your kitchen table? And, how are we going to do this? And I called one of my fellow founders, Ollie Pennell, who's our managing partner. And I said, how do we do this? So we had a moment of the fear, put the fear out there. And then we were like, right, let's start planning. For me, I learned that I'm super resilient. I probably knew that anyway. As long as I can express the fear, feel the fear and do it anyway, I think would be my sort of first moments of the pandemic. We put in daily calls, we rallied the team, made it very clear that we were not going to let anybody go from Q5. We were going to hold this organisation together as long as humanly possible. Very practically, that looked like not paying ourselves, the senior leadership team, for as long as it took to protect people's jobs. We put one foot in front of the other. There was no playbook. We had to make it up as we went along. So we focused out. We focused on our clients. I think for the first 2 weeks, I pretty much spent 2 weeks calling clients to say, how are you doing? What can we do? And we put all sorts of mechanisms in place to help our clients in that moment of need. In a consulting world, in a professional services firm, that's what you have to do. You have to put your clients first.
Yep.
But knowing that we'd already told the team that we were going to protect their jobs. And one other thing grew out of the pandemic that I'm particularly proud of, which is our pop-up consulting, because we knew that we might have a team of consultants who we didn't know if there was going to be work for the team to do. It turned out that there was. We all had a lot of work to do as we pulled together. We decided to offer up pro bono consulting to small businesses and charities that would never be able to afford consulting fees. That is still going today. I think we calculated it a while back, how many hours of free consulting that we've provided. And it's been award winning. And I'm very, very proud of the team that put that in place and then continue to run that today.
Wow, that's an amazing legacy from COVID, actually.
We set our Q5 Foundation up right at the start, and it houses our pop-up consulting, but it really powered our foundation and the efforts of the foundation. I wanted to just pivot my answer as well, because you asked about external moments. Do you know what? I wanted to share something quite personal. That I think actually in my career overall and my career at Q5, the most testing situations have been personal situations rather than external situations. Because again, the external situation is what it is. And if you're adaptable and resilient, you can make a plan and you can pull the team together. Over the last couple of years, my husband has suffered with quite severe mental ill health. And I think those have probably been the most testing times professionally. How do you balance your business and professional life with what your family and those that you care for and love need? That's an eternal balancing act. Ever since I've had kids and married my husband, that you're always balancing. But I think it's really important that we talk about those things. Our personal lives have to work alongside our professional lives. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the perfect balance. But I know that when his mental health is suffering, I know that I need to keep working. First up, I know that some people don't. Some people need to stop working, but I personally need to keep working so I don't get in the hole with him. But I do need to take time for myself away from everything and everybody.
Well, absolutely, because you've got to regenerate. But what do you do to regenerate, Sharon?
I love sport. I play sport with friends. I like team sport. I'm a teamster. I like team things. So I play paddle. I have over the years. I'm not at the moment, but I play hockey. I really enjoy the company of very good girlfriends. There is nothing that can't be put to rights with a good bottle of wine and a good clutch of close girlfriends. So I make sure I do plenty of that.
Lots of personal conversations. Absolutely. I think that's the key. And I've got two more questions for you, because I want to end the final question back on the spotlight of women in leadership. But I also lead on from what we've just been talking about in terms of at this stage in your career, when you think about legacy, what do you most want to leave behind?
I would like to leave a workplace at Q5 where brilliant consultants can have fulfilling careers, but they don't sacrifice their personal lives for that. Finding a way to
That's the holy grail, Sharon.
It is. So we're trying to do it. We're really trying to do it.
If anyone can do it, by the sounds of it, you can do it, because you're bold, courageous, and the art of the possible. But that is the dream. And I think that is a beautiful legacy to want to try and leave behind.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a work in progress,
And finally, as a closing question, like I said, in the spotlight of women in leadership, if a young woman listening to this is doubting whether she can lead, what do you want her to know?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Enjoy it while you do it. You won't know all the answers, but you will work them out. And work out who are the people that are good to have around you on that journey, because you won't do it alone.
Well, I think that is amazing, and your journey and what you've built, but also I think the work that you do with organizations, which is more than process and building things. You're actually looking at how they sustain long working practices and great relationships, and most importantly, like you say, enjoy what you do, but have a life to go with that. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. When you talked about being younger and also just what women or any young professional needs starting out, it's confidence. It's hard to build, but it's easy to lose.
Totally agree with you, Jen. I think it's about finding the people that lift you up and are there to help you on that journey. Because I think sometimes we come out of a competitive school system in the UK, that team environment, who's going to be your team, who's going to be your crew. And it changes, doesn't it, over time. But you've got to find your crew and then lean on them, ask for help when you need it. It's been wonderful to reflect and pause for thought in, where you start and what you're trying to do. So thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much for sharing with us today, Sharon. It's been a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you. And we look forward to catching up with you more about Q5 offline and where you want to take the business from here as well.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that, Jane.